So when you're talking about Mitchell Tech, is that?
No, all the way in Mitchell.
It is?
Yep.
Okay.
So that's where Laura.
Oh, so they
Laura
did it
Clark.
for us, and then, okay, so now what's the disposition of this?
Well, so they took our road glide, our 2018 road glide.
About 1 minute, Mayor.
Pretty much change everything out, and that's the one that's going to Meekum to raise money for.
Next week.
I'll slap him.
That's actually.
I gotta drive a Harley like that.
No.
I talked to, okay, Kevin's here.
Yeah.
Kevin is here.
Is top left.
Yell at those guys out there. All right, it's 6:30, so I call this regular meeting of the Sturgis Common Council to order on a Tuesday night, January 17th, 2023. First item is approval of the agenda. Got a first by Becca,
I'll second.
got a second by Preston. Any discussion on the agenda? All those in favor of the motion to approve the agenda, please indicate by stating yes.
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 Opposed to no. We've got an agenda. Please stand, remove cover, and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. Item 4 is informational reports. Nothing included in that section for tonight's meeting. Item 5 is announcements and praise. I'd like to take a moment to pray and praise our Heavenly Father. So if you'd like to join me, please do. Heavenly Father, thank you for the ability to meet. Thank you for the ability to come to you in prayer. We thank you for the gifts of faith and grace that you give, and just pray for the wisdom and strength to truly go to the cross as we face life's battles. We know it's all because of you, and thank you for making a way with your Son, Jesus Christ. In his name we pray. Amen. I'm supposed to come up here for this part.
Highest bidder.
Yeah, we could start an auction here. I'm coming up here. We want to talk about the unique situation with the 2018 Harley-Davidson Road Glide here in tonight's meeting. Earlier today, we had a reveal of this bike here right in these chambers. The plan was, with the spring-like weather we've been having, we're going to do it in Rally Point. With winter actually coming back, we're now here tonight, and we figured why not leave it here and talk about it briefly. This is a partnership with the city of Sturgis, along with Laura Clark, to helping with Horsepower, her organization, to help troubled youth and give people a mission and skills in life as they're younger and trying to change their life around. This is done also with Mitchell Tech as part of the process of building this thing. It went as a stock 2018 and came back as this. They pretty much replaced everything, changed the color, added all kinds of cool things, including the wing desk, along with the 83rd for this year's rally. We're selling this at Meekum next week. January 28th is when it's going up for sale. It goes up for sale through the Meekum auction with the intent to give back to charities, including Laura Clark's Helping with Horsepower, along with the City of Sturgis Rally Endowment, things that give back to nonprofit here in town, a situation where the rally could actually do good, help our citizens and help our community grow. So, but an awesome engineered and built piece of custom bike, just proud to be a part of it. But the reason it's here because we unveiled it earlier here in Sturgis, and it's on its way to Meekum auction in Las Vegas here in a week and a half. But that's that. Now I'm going back to my dais spot. Mark Marshall has been instrumental in this. This was his brainchild to do something like this. He's constantly thinking and using his skills outside of what he was signed up to do with the city of Sturgis and as a lawyer, but certainly improves our community and great partnerships and sponsorships to get these awesome things done. So appreciate being a part of all that. I've got a couple of notes here for sure. I got a couple of housekeeping notes here. The the Christmas tree drop-offs end on the 30th of this month, so unfortunately Christmas is over, but City of Sturgis will leave, the Public Works will leave those out there just for a little bit longer, till the end of this month. I had one more thing I didn't write down, and now it's escaped me, so. Anybody else have anything to add?
I do, please.
Go ahead, Becca.
I guess this qualifies as an announcement, but I wanted to say that I was looking at the legislature and the bills that have been introduced, and one I think worth noting is House Bill 1007. It's to add emergency medical services personnel to Class B public safety membership to the South Dakota retirement system. It's an issue that we as a council discussed back in April or May. And so I just wanted to alert everyone that it has been introduced to the House. It has been sent to the House Retirement Laws Committee. I do not see it on the agenda for tomorrow, January 18th, but I'm thinking it will soon be heard in committee. So if everyone wants to follow that, it's you can find it on the South Dakota State Legislature page.
Thanks, Counselor. Anything else to add from Council? Item 6 is Counselor's update. This is a situation where in the past we've alternated between department heads and then counselors to talk about things that have gone on or near future plans that we're currently working on. We also want to use an opportunity to have some kind of public outreach or some kind of educational process through some of these sections with meetings every 2 meetings every month. This one we're turning over to Mr. Miller. He's been working on many titles for us, but this is specific to the animal ordinance. And actually what we plan on educating here is what the City of Sturgis has in place for vicious animals, along with the process of which endures after if those things are declared such, and just the safety and well-being of our community. So, Eric, I'll turn it over to you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you mentioned, the purpose of this process is to essentially create a good forum just for discussion without really any action items, without any really goals or objectives. It's just an opportunity to present kind of maybe potentially a confusing ordinance and clarify and kind of outline what the city's process in implementing this ordinance on the ground. Since the city is taking more of a posture on enforcing ordinances, the vicious animal ordinance is one that may come up here in the near future or just over time. The overall goal of this ordinance is to address potential vicious animals throughout the community and to ensure for public safety, for just safety in general amongst the community. The ultimate process begins with a declaration of vicious animal and then runs through it goes to declaration of vicious animal. You need the initial declaration, then there's service to ensure that the animal owner is properly served. There's significant due process and requirements involved in the whole process. And once a declaration is served, then there's specific requirements that the landowner must follow to ensure that the animal is secure, isn't going to harm anybody, isn't going to break loose and cause a ruckus amongst the community. The primary due process concern stems to the ultimate, if there is non-compliance with the vicious animal ordinance, the ultimate potential penalty is euthanization of the animal. And that's ultimately to help pursue that public safety goal. The specifics for the declaration of vicious animal, generally the declaration is completed by the chief of police, or if he recuses himself, to the next in line, which generally would be the deputy chief. The declaration can stem from either a written request from a victim or attending physician of the victim from an animal bite or serious scratch, or alternatively, the chief can pursue the declaration based off of receipt of police reports or written statements from a credible witness of an animal that's kind of vicious or terrorizing manner approaches a person or another animal in apparent attitude of attack, or bites, inflicts injury, assaults, or otherwise attacks a person or other animal within the city. There is an exception to this, which is if the person's provoking the animal, if the person trespasses upon property and gets attacked by an animal, then that animal would not be considered a vicious animal. The specific declaration is signed by the chief of police, and that's after he does a thorough investigation in determining whether or not that animal is specifically vicious. Once the chief signs essentially it's a formal declaration of vicious, and the best practice is within that declaration, it includes kind of the investigation conclusion by the chief, any supporting documents to support that decision, and the requirements. This way, the declaration provides full disclosure to the animal owner on how this conclusion or declaration was found, plus what now requirements the owner must follow. Service is a key component of this declaration. The ultimate purpose is to ensure that the animal owner is fully aware that their animal is being declared vicious and what requirements they must follow. This goes to that whole due process component, which is extremely important in this process. Generally, under the ordinance, there's two means of service. There's personal service, which the chief would hand it directly to the animal owner, or you can send it through certified mail. Best practice is always personal service is the preferred method, but if it comes down to it, a certified mail would be sufficient. Once the animal's owner is notified of the declaration, they have 24 hours to register their animal with animal control. This way we have a good record-keeping process and follow-up for the requirements. The primary component of the declaration of vicious animal is to ensure that the animal will not attack, try to constrain the animal as much as possible, so it's not running loose and causing trouble amongst the city. If any of the aspects, for instance, the ownership changes, the animal's location changes, or if the animal dies, or if there's any significant health changes amongst the animal, the landowner or the property owner the animal owner must notify animal control of any of these changes. That way it's tracked throughout the community. Some of the other requirements is that if the animal is outdoors and attended, essentially going for a walk or anything of that sort off the owner's property, it must be muzzled, it must be on a leash no longer than 6 feet, and under the control of a person over the age of 18. This ensures that there's additional safeguards and control if the animal's out in the public. Also, the animal must be microchipped to identify and track the animal. And a sign must be placed on the owner's property denoting that there is a beware of animal, things of that sort, beware of dog, just showing that anyone passing by that there is potentially a vicious animal on the property. This sign must also be visible from either the sidewalk or the road adjacent to the property where the animal is kept. A primary component of requirement is that the owner must have an insurance policy of $100,000 for animal liability insurance, covering any potential medical or veterinary costs if the animal does happen to bite or attack somebody else. There's sufficient coverage that that person has some sort of recourse if that's the case. Also, the owner must provide proof that the animal has been altered, which is neutered or spayed. The ultimate purpose is to prevent reproduction of vicious animals. There's specific requirements for outdoors. If the animal is kept outdoors or is outdoors in general, for fencing requirements, that way the animal doesn't escape the property. So there's specific fencing requirements, there's spacing requirements, so the animal can't slip out or somebody can't stick their hands in the cage and things of that sort. The overall purpose is to ensure that the animal isn't running loose, causing trouble, biting, attacking, things of that sort. So then, all of those requirements are strict requirements, and failure to comply with any of those requirements may end up result in euthanasia of the animal. The ultimate purpose is if somebody's not willing to comply with these requirements, there's a potential threat to the community and public as a whole. So for safety and overall public welfare, usually euthanasia is the best option. There's no specific timeline on how soon the animal owner must comply with all of the requirements. Generally, that's left to the discretion of the chief of police. But for the most part, initially, the animal owner must take initial steps to secure the animal to prevent it from escaping their house, to running around and biting people. So it's just trying to put a short-term remedy on it until they can comply with the rest of the requirements. If the property owner or the animal owner fails to comply with the requirements, the city will then take a process to initiate essentially a court action with the end result being the euthanization of the animal. The sole purpose of filing the court action is to ensure that the animal owner gets the maximum amount of due process as possible. So every aspect of the city's actions will be reviewed by an independent body to ensure that the city's not acting arbitrarily, everything's in order, and the animal is in fact a vicious animal. So the process that I would take, once I have the declaration of vicious animal and then the owner has failed to comply, I would file a petition for essentially ratification of the vicious animal declaration and receive an order to seize the animal or order the animal owner to turn it over to the city, and then receive authorization for euthanization. That the process would essentially have a court trial to address all of these, where I would go in, present evidence showing that the animal's vicious, and the court would make a independent determination on whether or not that animal is in fact vicious, and then ratify the declaration. And also I would show that the landowner has failed to comply with the requirements, and then also request for euthanization or euthanasia. Generally, within that court case, I'd also be requesting costs for the euthanasia for any of the associated costs associated with the process. And in conclusion, the whole process is there to protect the public from vicious animals within the community, while balancing the owner's rights to due process and ensuring that the city's acting within its parameters. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Eric. I think that was a good explanation about the process of how we deal with vicious animals and the many layers that it takes to get us to, the worst case solution, but the only solution at that point. I appreciate you presenting it to us and to the public, as some of these ordinances aren't necessarily reviewed until there is an actual problem. So maybe being proactive will help us be a better community.
Appreciate it, Kevin. Any other comments, concerns, questions? Again, just an educational piece, no action required. This is currently on the books, Title 32, animals on our city ordinances. And like Kevin said, sometimes things come up and we'll reopen them up, but appreciate the education and the process, Eric.
Thank you.
Item 7 is city manager's report, so I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Ainsley.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Before I begin, though, I just want to extend my appreciation for last Friday. There were several volunteers from First Interstate Bank, Home Slice, as well as Karen Linus. They spent Friday cleaning up some remaining Christmas decorations throughout our downtown. Our Public Works crew spent most of last week cleaning up lights throughout the community. But these volunteers spent Friday cleaning up things that were in the garden areas and everything else. And so it's great to see a lot of very dedicated residents that spend a lot of extra time decorating and then also when necessary cleaning up afterwards. So thank you very much for their help. We appreciate that. For your sales tax update, this is for the month of November of 22. Just to let everyone know, it usually takes about 45 days after the close of a month for the city to get the final numbers for sales tax, and so that's why this is over November. It's not a mistake. We will not have December's numbers and all of 22's numbers. We won't have those until about this time next month. But for the month of November in 22 compared to the month of November of 21, total sales in the 2% general sales tax was 12.7% higher, so we had a very, very good November. If you look at the first 11 months of the year, November of last year, 22, was 3.2% higher than November of 21. What makes that so significant is that 21 was substantially higher than 2020. 21 was a higher year overall throughout the entire state. Sturgis was about double the increase that we had across the entire state. We had a significant amount of additional tourism that came to Sturgis throughout the entire year of 2021, and we also had a lot of construction activity and a lot of new residents. Everyone ended up spending more money locally, which was fantastic in 21. And we were just hoping that 22 would be similar, and actually we ended up beating it so far. We still have one more month to look at, but it was trending quite well. In the Triple B, which is the tourism sales tax, for November we were down. We were down in November compared to November of 21. It was 14.5% lower. Again, November is about the fourth smallest month of the year in tourism sales, and so very minimal amounts can mean large percentage swings. But for the year in the Triple B or tourism tax, we are 3%, I believe, 2.2% higher than what we were in 21. And again, you can see in this how dramatic of an increase we had in 2021. 2021 in tourism sales actually increased by over 30%. So it was a significant increase. You could definitely see that more tourists have found Sturgis and are choosing to spend time here. I think the additional exposure that we had in 2020 definitely put Sturgis on the map for at least half of America. That's everything I have for my report, unless there are any questions.
Thanks, Daniel. Appreciate that stuff, and we just keep on plugging forward and hopefully keep increasing like we are. Item 8 is considered consent calendar. We have 8.1 through 8.5. We got some minutes We got a resolution that has a typo both for 8.3 and 8.4. That's actually resolution 2023-14 instead of 11. And for 8.4, it's 2023-15 instead of 12. And the last one is setting a public hearing for next council meeting. Does council wish to remove any of those items and discuss them individually off the consent calendar? How about anybody in the public wish to remove? Bonnie, what do you have? Come to the microphone, please, or you got one there? Come up there.
Excuse me, 8.3 and 8.4. I just would like a little better understanding of those. Is that, did I get the numbers right?
Yep.
Did I forget what they
Yep.
were?
So, is there anything other than 8.3 and 8.4 that need to be removed? Is there a motion by council to remove those two and approve the rest?
I make the motion to approve minus 8.3 minus 8.4.
Got a first by Aaron,
Second?
got a second by Kevin. Any last discussion on 8.1, 8.4, and 8.5? All those in favor of approving those, please indicate by stating yes.
Yes.
Opposed to no. Please note unanimous for the roll call in the minutes there, Adam. 8.3, we got Mr. Smith joining us. So go ahead, Dave.
8.3 is a resolution for a final plat for Habitat for Humanity. They own a property on Sherman Street. They'll be splitting that into 2 parcels to build 2 new single-family residences.
Does that answer your questions, Bonnie?
Oh, yeah, it does. I was thinking of Nellie and Fleet, and you're talking Nellie and Sherman, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Because the one on Nellie and Fleet is already under construction.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, I'm sorry, I wasn't reading this right, and I didn't see how another house was gonna get in there by the one they're building, so. Okay.
Any other questions, comments, concerns with 8.3 concerning the resolution 2023-14?
Move to approve 2023-14.
Got a first by Kevin. Second by Preston. Any last discussion, public or council? All those in favor of the motion, please indicate by stating yes.
Yes.
Opposed to no. That motion carries. 8.4 is for Oak Grove. Mr. Smith, back to you.
This one is a plat to bring 2 parcels into one. As soon as it comes up,
One was a recreational.
the parcel in the rear of the home was originally the recreation lot for the development, but as things moved forward, a Starline Park got put in, so the recreation lot was no longer needed for that development, so that was sold to the owners of 171 Oak Grove Court, and they want to bring the 2 lots into one parcel so that they can construct a shed and do some improvements to the rear of that house.
Any other questions, comments, concerns?
What is that remainder government lot 2 that's attached to the recreational lot?
Well, it's not attached, it's a separate parcel. That's somebody else's property. It was just part of that subdivision. So the recreation lot, you can see, splits down between the government lot 2 and goes along the bottom and up top up by Vernon Heights. The dotted line was where the old property line would have been between the 2.
Thank you.
Any other discussion on resolution 2023-15? Public or council? Is there a motion?
I motion to approve 2023-15.
First by Preston to approve 8.4,
Second?
second by Kevin. Last chance for discussion on this item. None being heard. All those in favor of the motion, please indicate by stating yes.
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 Opposed to no. Consent calendar is approved. Item 9 is approval of the claims. Item 9 is approval of the claims. Any questions on the claims from the public or from council for tonight's bill paying? Amanda's coming forward.
I have a question on the item for the Prairie Hills Transit. I think it was about $7,000. I'm just curious if you could elaborate more on that.
Is that part of the line item that we have each year for Prairie Hills, and it's partial payment? We split it into two.
And it's just supporting the transit in
Correct.
Sturgis? Okay, excellent. I just wanted to comment that that's one of the things I hear when I'm talking to stakeholders and community members is public transportation. So it's just nice to see that we're supporting that organization in Sturgis. Thank you.
And to be 100% transparent, I sit on that board, and I believe at this point in time, we're the only community that has it as a line item in our hard budget for support of Prairie Hills Transit. So definitely a good situation for those that need the rides and for a community that has things to do and places to go. So appreciate people's input. Go ahead, Mike.
How many cities are supported?
Oh, I think there's 23 total organizations within the umbrella organization of Prairie Hills Transit for Western South Dakota, all the way from Edgemont to Lemon to out east to Wall and that area. So, and then Martin and other places. So
And we're the only city
we're the only, well, there, every year this Prairie Hills Transit, and Barb has to go as the executive director and discuss with counties and other municipalities the fact that, hey, funding's due again this year. What are you going to give us? As we've evolved through the years, the importance has been clear to us, and we push forward to put that as a hard line item in our budget and make it easier on the whole situation, because we certainly don't want it going anywhere. But hopefully other organizations and towns will follow that same suit at some point and make it a lot simpler for that funding to occur. There's also a lot of federal fundings that come from that, but definitely locals and how it works is the municipalities' partnerships. So,
thank you.
any other discussions, questions, comments, concerns on the claims? Is there a motion on the claims?
So moved.
Got a first by Mike.
Second.
Second by Angela. Any last discussion? We'll go ahead and roll call. Becca, we'll start with you. Yes. Angela?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
I'm yes. Kevin?
Yes.
Aaron?
Yes.
And Preston?
Yes.
Bills are paid. Brings us to item 10, which is reports. 10.1 is medical marijuana manufacturing license. Mr. Smith's already there, so back to you, Dave.
Well, the item in front of you for the medical marijuana manufacturing license, application was made by the Crop Shop for a medical marijuana manufacturing license at 2951 Whitewood Service Road. Crop Shop was issued a provisional license in 2022, pending the remodel of the building and the installation of the required sprinkler system. They are currently working on the remodel in the building located in the general industrial zone. The line for the required sprinkler system has been installed and the remodel is moving well forward. There's no limit on the amount of cultivation licenses or manufacturing licenses that can be issued in the city. The application fee and all the required information has been received. The $7,500 application fee has been received. There is limited amount of information that you have in your packets because some of it is personal and proprietary, but we do have all their items or their applications complete.
Any questions for Dave?
Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
I think that the complete application should have been uploaded for us to see on iCompass for the council.
I did have it there, and then I'm sorry I took some of it down because there was some private personal information that could have been out there in the public, so I guess I need to learn how to make it just for the council and not public. So I will work on that, and I apologize.
No, that's fine. Because, I'm glad that you said that. However, I would have liked to have been able to see that full application. Because, a month ago, when we looked at Puffy's and the other Northern Hills, their complete their packet was on the website. And so I understand proprietary information, the importance of that. However, I do feel like I was not able to review the full application. And so but I understand, and I thank you, Dave, for the explanation on that. I do have another question. Is this a renewal? Or is
This is in fact a renewal from,
Okay.
they were issued one last year, and they were pending their state licensing and then getting the permit and obtaining or doing the remodel
Sure.
and getting the water line in. So yes, this is a renewal.
Okay.
They did have everything into me prior to or the time that was allowed in the application or the ordinance.
Okay.
The reason that it's late getting here is because, again, I forgot to hit the right button at iCompass
Okay.
and put it on the agenda. So
Okay. All right. Well, thank you again for that explanation. But my question is, so one of the documents included in the packet is their insurance form, and on it, it has DBA for Olson Towing. Is that is that a problem that it's not for their business name?
currently, they can't get. This is my understanding. They can't obtain the insurance for the cultivation and manufacturing until they are in operation or about ready to start. So that's the insurance for the actual property in the building.
Okay. Okay. All right. Great. And then, so this is a full license moving from the provisional to the full. Is that correct? I mean, is that right?
Yeah, I guess they were both full licenses. The other one was provisional based on them getting the company getting the state licensing and getting the permit application in to us to start the remodel and get the sprinkler system and meet all the requirements.
Okay.
So I guess this is just another extension for them to finish. I anticipate, anticipating they'll be open within the next few months.
Okay. All right. Yeah, that was my next question on whether or not we have a kind of an end date for them to have the remodel and the sprinkler system, everything put in.
And they are here, so I can ask them that question.
Perfect. The end of February. End of February? Okay. All right.
Any other questions, discussions, comments, public or council on this 2023 license? What do you have, Bonnie? Come on out and join Dave.
Well, this is just, I'm going to display my ignorance, but I don't think I'm alone in it as we move on to the next piece. I'm really not clear what's the difference between manufacturing and cultivating. So could we have some clarification on that?
Cultivation is actually the growing of the plants. The manufacturing is taking what they take from the plants and manufacture the edibles, the smokables, the things like that. So you manufacture the raw plant into product that you can sell. The cultivation is just like you're cultivating corn, and then you pick it and cook it and eat it.
Okay. Thank you. So those two steps are all taking place on what was the Zylstra property, right?
Correct, yep.
Yes.
Okay, and then we talked previously, we had did we not have two different applicants for this?
Those are, if you're talking about the last one we had, those are for the actual dispensaries. Those are the people that will be selling the product to the people that hold the medical marijuana cards.
Okay, so at this point, we only have one cultivator manufacturer, and we have provided for two dispensaries.
Correct.
Is that correct? Thank you.
You bet.
Dave, I know it's not part of our ordinance, but is the property tax current on that property?
Yes, it is.
Thank you.
And part of the application process, Counselor, is that they do have to show that the property tax is current.
Any other discussions? Public or council? Is there a motion on this manufacturing license?
So moved.
Got a first by Preston. Second by Becca. Any last discussion, questions? None being heard. All those in favor of the motion, please indicate by stating yes.
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 Opposed, no. Any abstentions? So we got 6, 0, and 1 abstention for roll call. Item 10.2 is the cultivation license that's been touched upon previously, but back to you, Dave.
The only difference in the explanation, but I'll go over it, is this is for the actual cultivation or the growing of the medical marijuana. Again, this is a renewal to last year's license. They're still at 2951 Whitewood Service Road. They had that provisional last year to get everything else complete. They now have it complete, and they will be, as you heard, open at the end of February. So the remodel is moving along quite a ways. The city did receive the $7,500 application fee.
Thanks, Dave. Questions, comments, concerns on this cultivation license renewal? Public or council? Brandon?
So, is this a place where you can cultivate and manufacture? Can you go out there and buy it then, or you have separate?
Correct. Yep. Any other discussions? What do you have, Bonnie?
I just have a curiosity question. So, didn't the two dispensaries, excuse me, also have $7,500 licensing fees?
That's correct.
So, where does that $30,000 go in our budget?
General fund, I would imagine, is where it lands into. Yep.
Okay, thanks.
Any other discussions? Is there a motion for this renewal?
I'm making a motion to accept.
Got a first by Aaron,
Second.
second by Mike. Any last discussion? None being heard. All those in favor of the motion, please indicate by stating yes.
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 Opposed to no. Any abstentions? 6-0 to 1 again for abstention there. I believe, Adam. Brings us to item 10.3. Thanks, Dave.
Thank you.
This is first reading of last meeting's discussion of the Sturgis Community Cable Television franchises. Mr. Miller's coming back up, and I'll turn it back over to you, Eric.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. From the discussion to now, there's been very little changes. The ultimate goal of this is to renew the franchise agreement with Blue Peak, which was previously WOW and VAST and Midco, and continue the current agreement at essentially the same terms for the next 10 years. The only real difference isn't substantive between the discussion version and this version. The only real difference is that I updated the Blue Peaks information within this ordinance. Other than that, substantively, it's exactly the same as when we presented at discussion. This agreement goes through and provides the essentially duties of the franchisees within the city of Sturgis. A lot of the franchise agreement is regulated through the FCC. So there were provisions such as I think the city setting the base rate, the city, since there's more than one franchisee, that essentially the market competition will regulate the base rate. Therefore, the FCC has pulled that authority from the city. The primary FCC changes stems from a 2019 order that significantly impacted the city's authority for franchises for cable. And otherwise, many of the terms are all the same that we are currently active within the city. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Hey, thanks for your report, Eric. We have two providers right now, And so if a third provider wanted to provide service in our community, they would have to enter into a franchise agreement that I'm assuming
Yes,
for
and
them.
the
So,
state statute requires that if the city has a franchise agreement, it must be an ordinance. So essentially, if a new cable company came into Sturgis and wanted to provide services, we would have to amend the statute to incorporate them into this agreement.
and this is specific to cable services.
Yes.
So as we kind of continue to innovate in how we communicate data, information to people, do you think that will ever encompass those other types of technologies, or is this just very specific to cable for a very specific reason?
Essentially, if we want to expand beyond cable, we would have to either get FCC authority or state statute authority. So like as of right now, this franchise agreement does not encompass broadband internet or anything of that sort. It's strictly cable or video, essentially. So, I mean, there's been, in the past, prior to that 2019 FCC order, cities were expanding into, including franchise or in broadband into their franchises. However, the FCC in their 2019 order ended that and made an express exclusion. So it's very limited in scope, and essentially as technology grows, unless the legislature expands the city's franchise authority or the FCC expands more underneath the purview of cable services, that the city's very limited on what we can pursue under the franchise
And
agreement.
so this authority that's provided to us, is this dated? I mean, goes back maybe decades when cable was, so it maybe hasn't, from a state perspective, maybe caught up. Because obviously, I'm assuming, there's a reason that they put these agreements in place where the city enters into these franchise agreements. What I don't know is why unique to cable and not to any other type of media? I don't know if you can answer that, Eric. Don't necessarily need to. It's just more of a curiosity from my perspective as you look into the future. Is not many people compared to a decade ago have cable. They get their information differently. I haven't had cable for 5 or 6 years.
I mean, it potentially could go to because essentially the city's receiving 5% franchise fees from under this franchise agreement. The essential question would be, what can the city give back? For instance, is there any sort of cost to the city for the broadband, for the various technologies? Like, for instance, like DirecTV doesn't fall underneath this because I think it's a direct broadcasting service, so it's different than cable.
So maybe a financial impact on the community kind of determines that.
Yeah.
Okay. And these other services may not have that same kind of financial impact or no financial impact.
Yeah.
Okay.
Counselor, some of the history behind that is these agreements actually allow them to be able to use public rights-of-ways, and so they have lines that run through our streets and systems like that. And so in lieu of actually getting a rent payment or a payment for occupying that right-of-way, this is in exchange for that. One of the reasons why the federal government has been hesitant to to authorize municipalities to be able to receive some of the broadband potential revenue is that it makes it a competitive disadvantage compared to satellite operators or some of the other wireless communications, because there's no mechanism for municipalities to collect from that. And so there's been significant lobbying by the telecommunication companies to ensure that this is limited only to cable, television, which in essence means it's a dwindling resource because every year there's fewer and fewer people that are doing it.
So it still comes back down to there's some infrastructure,
Yeah.
it's in place within those communities where the other ones that don't necessarily have those kind of impacts.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
To add on that, if one of these cable companies was to reduce their services, because they offer cable TV and broadband, if they were to stop offering the cable TV, then we would lose the franchise fees for that.
Yes.
Okay. And then, So then we do have a broadband-only company in the city limits, SDN Communications. So they don't contribute in any way to use of right-of-way or.
Maybe there's sales tax collected, I'm not sure. But that would be
Yeah. Sorry for digressing on that.
I'm sorry, I don't know for sure on that.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Any other discussion, public or council, on first reading of cable TV franchisee agreement? We did this 10 years ago and we do it again tonight. No further discussion being heard. Is there a motion on this first reading?
I'll make a motion to accept.
We have a first by Aaron,
Second.
second by Angela. Any last questions, comments, concerns? Public or council? All those in favor of the motion, please indicate by stating yes.
Yes.
Opposed to no. Please note unanimous on the roll call there, Adam. Thank you, Eric. Item 10.4 is Resolution 2023-11, 2023-12, and -13, along with TIF 26. Mr. Ainsley's got our staff report and information on the board. Back over to you, Daniel.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and I will try to go through this fairly quickly. This is a presentation for Tax Increment Financing District 26, just so that everyone realizes in the state of South Dakota, if you say TIF, TIF-D, or TID, they're all in reference to the same thing. It depends on the news media outlet you are reading or the various city. All three are literally the exact same thing, but just so that everyone is aware. A very quick example of what a tax increment finance district is in South Dakota. What occurs is a city council will adopt a project boundary. That project boundary would include a couple different parcels, or maybe in this particular instance, it's a singular parcel. Sometimes it might be 5 or 10 parcels. Whatever the assessed valuation of the parcel is at that time of adoption, that becomes the base value. So the taxing entities that are receiving a mill levy based on that assessed value continue to receive that same amount of money continually until the TIF is paid off. What happens is, hopefully, and this is a great example of it, that value is quite low because it's a vacant lot. After 2 homes are built on it, the valuation will probably go up to about $350,000 or so. At that point, the property taxes that are paid are going to increase substantially. That additional property tax revenue then is used to pay off the loan that is taken out by the developer to build the infrastructure necessary to actually create those private improvements. And so in this particular case here, Habitat for Humanity will be taking a loan out from the city to install a sewer line extension main so that 2 new homes can be built in our community. That will generate probably around $2,500 to $3,700 of additional property tax revenue each year. That money will be collected or paid by those new residents in our community. They will be paid to the county. The county will collect those and send the payment back to the city, and the city will use that to repay the loan that the city initially would be providing to Habitat for Humanity. Once that loan is fully repaid, then the property owners will continue to pay the same tax rate, but that new revenue then will be going to the school district, to the county, and to the city. The impact immediately upon taxing agencies, the school district is usually supportive of TIFs. The reason for that is schools receive the increased funding from the additional students in the school system. So in this case, I imagine there's going to be a few new students that are probably going to be in our school system once those homes are built. I don't think they have the families identified yet, but likely once the homes are built, at least one of the families will probably end up having a child that'll be going into the school system, so the school system would be receiving additional revenue. In addition, the increased valuation that the school would otherwise get is actually backfilled by the state, because this is an affordable housing TIF. So with that, the state will actually make whole the school district. And so it's a way that we actually get some additional funding from the state to our local schools. As far as the city, initially the school would receive new building permit revenue immediately. That's typically the case. As it's a 501c3, we'll actually forgive those building permits. But with the additional new residents in our community, we average almost $1,000 annually in sales tax revenue generated for each new residents in our community. Also, we'll receive new utility revenue. If you look in our sanitation fund, about 59% of our costs are fixed costs. And so it's a net profit of additional revenue to our sanitation fund of about $115 per year per home. In our wastewater fund, it's 97% of the revenue received would actually be additional revenue for our wastewater fund, and so that generates almost $500. In our water fund, it would generate just over $200. And the county would also receive new vehicle license fees, 911 fees, and other fees immediately as well. So each of the government entities would receive new revenue once residents move into these new homes, and then once the TIF loan is repaid, then there's additional revenue beyond that as well. And so sometimes people have concerns about tax increment financing districts, saying that it harms communities or the taxing districts. That is the case in some states. And a lot of times they'll bring up a scary story out of, some community in Indiana or something like that. I think it's important for everyone to remember that state laws are unique for each individual state. In the state of South Dakota, when these occur, each of the government agencies receive additional revenue right away, so there's not this significant gap where there's additional costs and there's no revenue to cover those costs. Up for discussion tonight is we are asking the council to, number one, create the finance district boundary, and also to review and approve the project plan. One of the terms that's included in the resolutions, and just want to make sure that the public is aware, is a term blight. By statutory definition, it is blighted if the predominant or more than 50% of the area has obsolete platting, a diversity of ownership, various other things, including if there's a lack of site improvements or infrastructure that delays or arrests the sound growth and development of the area. That is defined as blight. The very fact that they're taking out a loan from the city to extend sewer is an example that there's a lack of infrastructure there, which is hampering the development of that site. Also, you're required to have a recommendation from the Planning Commission for the creation of the district. That occurred, I think it was last week, or 2 weeks ago, that it was a unanimous recommendation to the City Council to create the tax increment financing district. As far as looking at our comprehensive plan, the comprehensive plan was adopted about 14 years ago. This would help fulfill 4 of the goals that are included in that comprehensive plan. Number one, the plan laid out that the city should provide mixed residential styles and densities to accommodate a range of housing preferences and needs. Sturgis should provide a variety of housing for residents at all stages of their lives, including young adults and seniors. The city should preserve existing housing and develop new housing to support new growth and community development strategies. And finally, Sturgis should encourage the development of entry-level housing that helps young families build equity within our community. The proposed boundary up until tonight was a single parcel, and after the action of the council tonight, 20 days after it's published in the newspaper, it would end up becoming 2 parcels. So it is a very small TIF district. But as you can tell, more than 50% of the site is vacant. There's a lack of adequate infrastructure that hampers its development, and that is the definition of blight statutorily. Also, it impairs the sound growth of the community. You can see that that lot has been vacant for quite some time, even though it's in a built-up area of our community. And this TIF district would allow for infrastructure upgrades that would catalyze planned growth. Also, if anyone's concerned about the number of TIFs or that Sturgis is having too many TIFs, the state does limit the number of TIFs you can have. Each municipality and also county cannot have more than 10% of their value in a TIF. Currently, our total TIF base value is just about 10.5 million. Our current valuation in 2022 was 625 million. So if you look at it, we're at about 1.7% of our total assessed value is in a TIF. So we are way, way below the state required maximum. I know when the mayor and I go to various municipal league meetings, you run into a lot of cities that can't do TIFs, and they haven't been able to do TIFs for years because they've been at that 10%. Sturgis is not even coming close to approaching that. So we are well within our statutory ability. Also, not that it's a requirement, but if you look at the total amount of land, less than 5% of the city's total area is in a TIF district. And so a very small portion of the community is in a TIF. When we do create TIFs, they tend to be incredibly small in our community. A lot of cities, they will have, and an example like this, to try to generate additional revenue, they would have the entire block or maybe 4 blocks that would be included in the TIF district to try to generate even more money so that there's more money available to make more improvements on that site. That's not Sturgis's philosophy. We end up having very conservative and small TIF districts. Within the project plan, we are using a very conservative approach. Each home is assumed to be owner-occupied throughout the entire life of the TIF, 20 years. We're anticipating that construction on the first home would begin somewhere around 2023 and the second home somewhere around 2025. Again, if there's a 1 or 2 year slack on that, that's okay, but that's what we assumed. We assumed a stable assessed valuation of $175,000 annually. If you look at the overall appreciation of home values in Sturgis, you can see over a 20-year time frame, it's very doubtful that 20 years from now the homes would still be valued at just $175,000. Given those assumptions, the TIF loan would be repaid in 17.5 years. The TIF would generate $35,000 for infrastructure improvements that would mostly be used to extend infrastructure lines. $5,000 for the administrative fees. Usually that is $25,000. It's a smaller amount because we're trying to assist some affordable housing. And also it's at a 6% annual fixed interest rate. It's an internal loan. That means that the city is providing the funding for that. The recommendation is to approve the TIF boundaries, which is resolution 2023-11. And then a second motion, which would be to approve the project plan, which is resolution 2023-12. And then a third motion that would authorize the signing of the necessary documents, and that's resolution 2023-13. Are there any questions?
Thanks for the explanation, Daniel. Go ahead, you got something coming up.
Daniel, I was going to ask quickly about the administration fees. Who do those get paid to? And I guess to be more specific on my question, as part of the TIFs, the county assessor's office has to maintain the base balance, the base value, and track the value on that TIF for the 20-year duration of that. And so is there compensation on that side for the additional workload?
The administrative fees are retained by the entities that actually prepare the TIF documents and proceed with going through the public hearings and everything else. So most cities, they contract with their local council of governments or another entity like that. The city of Sturgis over the past 6 years have been producing our own in-house, and so those fees are paid to the city and deposited in the general fund. And you can see in some years it's generated a decent amount of money, and then other years where no TIFs have been approved, it doesn't generate anything. But in this one, the $5,000 would be deposited into the general fund.
seems like we need to kind of hold on to that end of that. Small TIFs probably cause us a lopsided approach to our county to handle their assessment duties on these. This is a great project. I support it, but I'm just bringing up the fact that there's connected actions that reach out beyond the municipality's responsibility and budget authority.
Any other discussion from council? Bonnie, what do you have over there? Come on up.
Got it down to 3.5 steps
Huh?
from there to here. Like Kevin, I'm not opposed to this, but I do have some questions about it. Explain the panhandle on the configuration of the properties.
Easement or access to the back alley is, sewer through there to connect. Infrastructure, connectivity to both lots.
The sewer line would be extended along the alley itself. And so in order to ensure that this home that would be built here would be able to have their sewer line on their own property, that's what that's for. Otherwise, it would be an easement, and then 35, 40 years from now, if that line ever failed, then you're going to have one neighbor crossing onto another neighbor, and that often causes conflict.
Are these addresses, will these both be Nellie Street addresses, or will one be a Sherman Street address?
It usually depends on how the homes are actually placed on it, where the front door opens onto. And so the one front door could be off of Nellie or Sherman. I don't know, topographically, maybe one side makes more sense than the other, but wherever the front door opens.
And then you talked about assuming that they'll be owner occupied for the duration of the loan. What difference does it make if they are or are not owner occupied? And what if they're not?
If a property is not owner occupied, so any commercial property or a rental property pays a higher mill levy for the schools. So for the city and county, it doesn't make a difference, but for the school district, it's a fairly substantial difference. It's about a 40 or 50% increase. And so if it would not be owner occupied, say in year 18, at that point, the taxes would be higher, and then the TIF would be paid off even higher. So that's why we take the most conservative approach and assume that the tax rate's always going to be as low as possible.
Okay, so that perspective is just a matter of anticipating.
The worst case scenario,
Right.
which owner occupied is not really a worst case scenario, but just financially from the
Sure.
numbers.
Lowest tax collection.
Correct.
Okay, and then when you talked about the fees and how the money, the financial loop, and how it loops back in with the city and the county and the schools, et cetera. I mean, that only applies if it's someone new to our community, doesn't it? If it's someone who's already here, who moves into those houses, we've already got their license plates, we've already got their kids in the school, we've already got.
What happens in that situation, if they're already within our community, then their existing home opens up for another individual to be able to move in. When we have a vacancy of less than 1% in our community, if someone moves from, say, an apartment into the house, which would be a fantastic story, then that allows someone else to be able to move into our community. We have employees right now of the city, and I know that we're not the only employer, but we have employees that are actively looking for places to live in Sturgis because they don't want to drive from Rapid, they don't want to drive from Spearfish, they don't want to drive from Deadwood to come in. And so if there's a new home or a new apartment that opens up, then it allows someone else to move into our community that would then in turn generate that additional revenue.
Thank you. And thank you for re-enlightening us on the whole TIF process and what it means, because every time this comes up, it takes about 7 minutes for me to remember what all that's about. So thank you for doing that for us up front.
Thanks, Bonnie. Any other discussion? I know we got the Habitat for Humanity folks here. Have anything to add, subtract? We welcome you here for sure. Scott, I'll have you come up here just so we got it on the record. You can hear it on the live stream. We don't get any franchise fees on that.
Yeah, Scott Engman, Executive Director of Black Hills Habitat for Humanity. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and esteemed council members. We're excited to be here in Sturgis. We really appreciate the reception we've had, and the homes that we're going to build are for families that are hardworking and need an opportunity to become homeowners. And we don't just build the home, but we actually partner with them on the education to make sure that they're ready for it, get them in consumer credit counseling and home maintenance and all those support pieces, so they're really responsible homeowners. And what I love to think about too is, just going to your questions, Bonnie, is one of the partner families that's just about there in his hours to get assigned the home. He'll be moving down from Deadwood, and the other partner family is living with her parents now, so she'll be a new homeowner here. So it's a pretty exciting opportunity. We appreciate getting to partner with the city.
Thank you. Any other discussion, public or council? We do need 3 separate actions on this one agenda item. So if there's no further discussion, is there a motion on Resolution 2023-11?
I make a motion to approve Resolution 2023-11, creation of the tax increment district.
We got a first by Aaron and a second by Mike. Any last discussion, public or council? None being heard. All those in favor of the motion, please indicate by stating yes.
Yes.
Opposed to no. That motion carries. Next item is Resolution 2023-12. This is the project agreement.
I motion to approve project agreement 2023-12.
First by Preston,
Second.
second by Angela. Any last discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please indicate by stating yes.
Yes.
Opposed to no. That motion carries. And the last one is 2023-13. This is for signing the agreements. Is there a motion?
Move to approve 2313.
We have a first by Kevin,
Second.
second by Mike. Any discussion, public or council? None being heard. All those in favor of the motion, please indicate by stating yes.
Yes.
Opposed to no. All 3 of those resolutions have passed, and we can move forward with that. So thank you guys for your efforts on this. Item 11 is other matters before the council. An opportunity for people to bring up an agenda item not on a non-agenda item for brief discussion. We'll start with the public. Anything not on the agenda? What do you have to add, Bonnie? Come on up. 2.5 steps. You got to jump one.
Made it in 2, huh? I can sit or I can walk, but I can't go
Can't do
from one
both.
to the other.
Yeah.
I have a pat and a pan, and so I'd like to start with the pan first, anytime there's something that's less than tasteful. But I have been, and we talked recycling last time around as well, I've been to the recycling area several times of late, and I'm just, Rick, sorry for your guys at the way that's being done and the way it's being treated, and it makes me irritated with us as citizen users, but it also makes me worried as someone who's into doing the recycling that we're going to lose it. But it was an absolute mess out there this week again. And I'm seeing more of the bags of just household garbage that just should not be happening. And so I want to say again, there are those of us in the community, like your folks who did the Christmas decorations, who are willing and anxious to have that perpetuated and are willing to do what it takes to help with that. Let us help, because something has to change out there. I don't see you, Rick, supervising the people who have to deal with that, letting that go on a whole lot longer, and I don't want to lose recycling. And so I guess my criticism is of my fellow citizens who are abusing and misusing our recycling area. we're going to lose it if that keeps happening, and I don't want that to happen. So I'll stop whining there. But that's a strong pitch for me. We want to help. Let us help. I think there are things that we can.
Larger all the time. People come from auxiliary cities and from rural areas and dump their garbage. Now, I don't know at what point we put up cameras. I imagine the vandals will be happy to have something else to destroy, but I'm almost thinking we're going to have some type of surveillance system.
Well, and I recognize that, and I agree that the household garbage is probably not so much we ourselves. But there are other things that are out of control there as well in the way they're being handled. And, you know, your worn out bed frame does not belong at the recycle center. And so it's not a problem we're going to solve here. I think it's going to take some group work and some brainstorming as to how we can resolve that, but I wish we would start moving forward on that. And like I said, there are those of us out there who are willing to help with that. Not at 9 degrees, but you know, we can help, and we will. The other one is that I have been more frequently to the library lately than I usually do. I'm one who tends to buy my own books if I want to read a book and not spend that much time at the library, but I've had reason to be there lately, and I just want to say that in addition to the unbelievable variety of activities and things that go on from our library, those people have absolutely mastered customer service. And I am re-impressed. I mean, it'll be not at all on my mind, and I am re-impressed every time I go there at how welcoming they are, how happy and upbeat they are, and how willing they are to pitch in and solve a problem. And I was there the other day and trying to connect with somebody, and my phone went out of charge, and I'm hanging by my thumbs because I can't do my next step. And when I said, oh, crud, my phone is dead, she didn't say, oh, that's too bad. She said, oh, what kind of charger did you need? I bet we've got one in the drawer. You know, to see a need, consider a solution, and step up and offer it. Those people have mastered customer service, and I appreciate what they're doing there. Enough said.
Thanks, Bonnie. Any other matters from the public? How about council additions?
Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
Just in response to Bonnie's comments on the recycling center, would it be something that maybe could be solved by moving it up to the rubble site where there is the ability to have water bills monitored? I mean, I know that part of what is so great about the recycling center is the location and the convenience, but I think that if it gets to a point where it just is being abused by people who are not courteous enough to follow the rules, I would hate to see it go away. But I also don't think it's fair to our public works to have to pick up people's trash from there. So I don't know. I think it's worthwhile to explore solutions.
Hey, Mr. Mayor, on that topic, you know, there's some things that we can do to improve our education. And Rick and I have talked about this. And in fact, Bonnie and I and one of the staff members went up to Rapid City to see their whole production and they collect it and how they distribute it. And there's some things that Rapid City does that really leans forward in educating their population. And those are things that, Bonnie and I and Rick have talked about that, we can emulate some of those things to help to educate. But I would agree, kind of going along the line with what Beck was saying, is that I don't think we'll ever, even through improved education, we're never going to get to not having any problems. And probably, as you kind of put it out there, is just convenience and the proximity, and so it's something that I've been thinking about. Bonnie and I have met on this a couple times and trying to understand, what would be above and beyond education, how could we solve that problem? You have somebody there all the time and it's managed during certain hours. You could do some kind of surveillance system, as Mike was pointing at, as discussed. Or B, you change the location to where we could control it, maybe not as convenient, but still convenient for the things that you want to do. So I do think we need to continue to look at the problem, and right now what we're doing is not the answer. We need to do something different to make this more viable and then also protect that service, as Bonnie just pointed out.
There's one alternate that I'd add to my list of two. We put out a bounty.
Arm Bonnie at the gate. Any other discussions?
Well, I would say to Becca, I mean, and I agree. I understand that, but the last solution I would like to see is to have it relocated.
Yep.
Because I think what we're gonna get is more recycling in our trips to Bellefouche, just because people aren't gonna drive.
Take it all the way out there.
To do their recycling, and I functionally have two things I do. I haul myself to the rubble site. I haul my stuff to the rubble site, and there's certain things I haul to the rubble site, and I take my recycling to the recycling area. And that is so convenient that I am recycling so much more now that that area is there than I would if I had to go all the way to the
Rubble
to the
site.
rubble site with it. And there are those times, I mean, I call up there and ask the guys, this is Bonnie, with my not four-wheel drive Toyota, can I or can I not get in and out today? And they advise me accordingly. So I would like not to relocate it. I'd like to, we're not gonna fix the problem, but I think we can improve it sufficiently. But I think it's gonna take some heads.
Right.
I think, what Aaron said, looking at what other communities have done with their recycling program, I've kind of noticed in one area of Rapid City that they have closed their recycling drop-off point. So did that move to their transfer site? And just asking those questions about
Rick's
their
coming up.
solutions.
We weren't going to solve this tonight, I thought.
That is one of the problems. Most communities, or a lot of communities, have closed down. Hence, everybody is now bringing it here because we remain open.
Not everybody, but.
I had a conversation this weekend, somebody was posting on one of the social media sites in Spearfish that, oh geez, bring it to Sturgis. Sturgis takes everything for free, which is not the case. But we are seeing a lot of that, and I think that there are definitely some things that we can do. We can sit down and have some conversations with the council, or however you guys want to do it, legal and finance. But we certainly have some ideas on what we could do to help eliminate it. But I agree, you're not ever going to completely eliminate it. The whole commodities market, it's just not very profitable to recycle anymore. There's very few places we can even take things to. We constantly see more and more stringent requirements on our end to be able to drop off things, which causes more work on our end to have to sort and whatnot. But certainly there's some things that we can do. We just need some direction from the council and maybe have an opportunity to put forth some of our ideas. But I think there's definitely some room for improvement.
Thanks, Rick. Future discussions for sure.
To the perimeter of the fence really helps with the blowout.
We'll build a berm.
Any other discussions for other matters? None being heard, we do have a request for executive session. Mr. Marshall, any anticipated action out of our executive session? No. No anticipated action, but is there a motion to go into exec?
So moved.
First by Preston,
Second.
second by Angela. All those in favor of the motion, please indicate by stating yes.
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 Opposed to no. We're going into exec at 7:53 currently. We're going in about 5 minutes.
hold on.
We gotta get live here.
Yeah, and let me get your mics on.
Right. All right. 9:08. We're back in regular session. The last item is adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn this? We got a first by Mike. Second by Angela. All those in favor of the motion to adjourn, please indicate by stating yes.
Yes.
Opposed to no. We're adjourned. Thank you.